Hello everybody, this is Muchaneta here. I'm at the Keyhouse at Munich Fabric Start with Jon from Sewbo. Actually, we've met a few times, haven't we? We've met in Bangladesh, I think, the first time.
That's right, yeah.
We both were at an event in Bangladesh, and it was quite an interesting event, I think, because it's kind of nice to see fashion tech taking place in other parts of the world.
Yeah, and when you get over to Bangladesh, you get to see like the real world of where all of our clothes come from and how everything really works. It's always fascinating.
So tell me a little bit about what you do. Tell people about what Sewbo is all about.
So Sewbo is developing automation technology for apparel manufacturers. We're doing sewing as our most important project. I think this is something the industry desperately needs, and it opens up a tremendous amount of possibility for the future of fashion. So sewing is our main project, and we're also doing a number of other automation projects around other tasks in apparel factories that need automation, things like embellishment or linking for knit goods.
Okay.
But sewing is our main project, and this is kind of what we're best known for.
So what would you say is your USP? What makes you different from everybody else? What makes you kind of stand out?
Well, we can sew garments entirely with robots, which is actually quite unique in the industry. Right now, most of the automation requires a human operator to do the kind of bulk material handling, transferring fabric from one machine to another and things like this. Even if there's automation, you still need a person there. But because of our sort of special approach, we can do this entirely with robots.
Wow, that must be scaring a few people, I'm sure.
Yeah, we get a little pushback, but I think it's what we are. It's humans. We're tool users. We do things better and more efficiently, and that is kind of how we've gotten to where we are today. I mean, I'm speaking into a microphone right now, and this makes the interview easier, right?
Yes, true.
I sort of like to point back to the invention of the sewing machine, because people were actually very upset when the sewing machine was first invented. And
really?
It's my understanding that the first tailor shop to use a sewing machine was actually burned down by an angry mob who thought that the sewing jobs were going to go away. But of course, we wouldn't have this industry. We wouldn't have events like this if sewing were still done by hand. Everyone would just be wearing one or two sets of clothes, and that's just kind of how the world would be if we didn't have these tools. And so I think you can look at pretty much any labor-saving device the same way. And it's true, when technologies disrupt existing industries, the people who are displaced suffer. So we shouldn't take this lightly. We need to worry for real about what's going to happen to these workers, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't, pursue these technologies and try to continually improve ourselves and our industry and things like that.
I always feel like with technology, when it comes on and it makes our life easier, other jobs are created. So for me, it's not so much like, it wipes an entire workforce. It recreates other jobs and makes it possible for people to find other kind of, other skills that they could use.
Yeah, historically that's how it's always played out. Now, there are some economists today who see the sort of robot AI revolution as being maybe a little bit more disruptive, just because of the kind of rapid onset that it might have, and the people will kind of find themselves very quickly overtaken by these tools. And so I think that's why it's really important we start to consider these issues ahead of time. And,
I agree.
There are some really innovative programs out there for retraining workers, upskilling them, and doing things like this, and I think that's terrific.
Yeah, I always think about, this is a bit silly, but I always think about the supermarket. And you know how they've got self-service now? So, or the cashiers, we don't need them as much because we're all happy to serve ourselves.
Yeah.
So when you think about kind of the advancement of technology in that respect, that it's kind of takes away jobs. But then you think about those cashiers, and they're being retrained in other areas of working within the supermarket still.
Yeah, and in a lot of cases, these jobs are not necessarily the most desirable in the first place. So, especially for these super labor-intensive tasks and things like this, if we can get the worker off of this very meticulous sewing task and into a design or, more cognitive workload, this is going to be better for them, and it's going to be better for everyone because these are more valuable skills. These are things that humans can do and machines can't.
That is true. So this is your first time here at the Keyhouse.
It is.
How are you finding it?
Oh, it's great. I'm not from the apparel industry, so for me, getting to come to an environment like this and meet everyone and get to see all these other incredible innovations. It's always educational but inspiring. So I find it to be a really valuable experience.
So what's been the kind of reception from those who attend the Keyhouse? I mean, have they been curious about what you do? Are they interested, or are they more kind of reserved? Because they're quite a hard crowd sometimes.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think the fashion folk, they worry a lot about fabrics and design and stuff like that. Somewhat counterintuitively, I think probably just because of the way the industry has become globalized and the designers and retailers have become so distant from the actual manufacturers. You don't find as many designers who actually, spend that much time thinking about the process for making the clothes or what's going on in these factories. I mean, it's not really their job, so that's
See,
okay.
I think it is. I disagree with you. I think a designer needs to look at the full picture and not just zoom in on what they do. Like, who is producing your clothes? What kind of materials are you using? I think a lot of students in education, I'm hoping they're being taught this now. Like, look at factories. Where are your clothes going to be made?
And that's a good point. I am actually really surprised, but I get so many letters from students asking, where is this going? How can I learn to, work on these systems and things like that? So I think things are probably changing a little bit. But I do feel a bit like the odd man out at events like this sometimes. Well, for one thing, I'm like the worst dressed guy in the room.
Not at all.
But
You're smart. You're very smart today.
I had to try a little harder than usual. But, beyond that, just again, because I'm not from the industry, I do sometimes feel like I kind of have to explain why I'm here.
But do you know what it is with the fashion industry? I sometimes feel like they do need people who are not from the industry to speak to them, to collaborate with, to partner up with, because they kind of see like this and they need to kind of zoom out a little.
Yeah, and because the industry is always pushing the envelope when it comes to design and materials and sustainability and things like this, but when it comes to the actual manufacturing technology and methods for this, it is a little behind the times.
They're a bit slow on that, yes.
Taking an outsider's perspective can, I think, bring a lot of value.
It might anger them, but I think it gives them food for thought.
Yeah, so our main technology was actually adapted from 3D printing, from rapid prototyping for other engineering fields, and being able to kind of bring that in to the apparel industry has really shaken things up a little bit.
See, I like a bit of a shake-up. I think the industry is really in need of one. So finally, would you come back to the Keyhouse?
Oh, certainly, yeah.
So make sure that you leave making contacts, because we've got so many people here that, especially those that are kind of exhibiting, who would definitely probably want to hear more about your product.
I think my pocket's already stuffed with business cards.
So that's good news. That's what I like to see. Thank you so much, Jon.
Thank you.